Welcome to Subramani. I'm going to talk to you about a complicated topic. This is the relationship between an IFA and a client, right? So first of all, let me take you back maybe to 1982 when I started my life and my career. I started off, and maybe in 85, 86, I just started my income tax practice, and I was not so much into trading shares for others. I always thought equity trading would be my job. I would do it as a hobby, but not as a main profession. So I was here filing income tax returns, handling commissioners and income tax tribunal, because I was handling a friend's practice, a boss's practice. And I was enjoying myself, and then I decided that I will quit all that and come into wealth management. When we said wealth management, we didn't even use the word wealth management. A client came and he said, "Oh, can I buy shares?" So we bought shares for him. Then we said, "Aren't you paying too much tax?" We created an HUF, we created association of persons, maybe 100, 150, maybe 1000 odd private limited companies, mostly to reduce the tax impact, because you could do some clubbing provision, which was compulsory. So make a loss-making AOP, create a minor to file a return, make the loss-making AOP and minor a partner, so that the losses are clubbed with a minor. All these kind of things which we did was part of our wealth management, right? So you picked up and said, "Oh, so much of 7,000 rupees was the tax-free dividend. Beyond that, you have to pay tax." So making sure that everybody had an HUF, an AOP, and okay, now you call it LLP, but a partnership, a private limited company, depending on the wealth that they had. I'm talking of 1 or 2 crores. But I'm not talking about 2021, right? I'm talking of 1986, 1987. So those are all the things we did, apart from doing research on companies and finding out which company is a good buy, etc. So today what has happened is a lot of your wealth managers will have no clue what is an AOP, what is a HUF, why these things are done. Neither does your chartered accountant know what is long term, short term, why trading happens. Getting one person who can think with an with an integration of your personal goals, your wealth requirement, your brokerage needs, and your taxation, being able to combine all this. For example, if you have a client with a 25 crore net worth, you may have to say, don't give away all your wealth to your son even after your death. Simply put it in a trust, because a bad marriage can mean he will lose all the money, right? Or if you have a daughter, you can say, if you want to get married to a person of a particular religion, then you get married in Goa, because the Special Marriages Act will be applicable. So all these things used to be part of our job, and we used to do it without categorizing ourselves as wealth manager or broker. For us, long term meant 3 years, because income tax itself said 3 years meant long term. Now then they kept changing what is long term. So long term for land, long term for real estate, for debentures and bonds, for mutual funds, for equities, they keep changing. But I'm saying managing clients' expectation, managing what the client should have. For me, even today, an ideal portfolio is one where the client can meet all his goals. I don't do client management, but what happens is some IFAs, MFDs do come to me and say, "Here is my client's portfolio, what rejig do you think it needs?" That's useful. You have to do that. If you can't do that, you have to outsource somebody else to do that, right? So see what you want from your IFA. Do you want all this from your IFA? Is your IFA capable of doing this, or is he only capable of saying, "Sir, here is a small cap fund and NFO coming at ₹10 and buy it," or saying, "Sir, this fund, it is now 5-star, so I think you should invest." So the question is, if the only capability that your IFA has is to say he will be able to pick funds, then there is something wrong, right? You also have to decide from whom you want to learn, and whether you want to learn or whether you want to just say, please manage it for me, right? Both are possible. Like, you have to understand the role of that person. Is he a teacher who is there only to teach, or is he a practitioner who has also created wealth? Mostly there are many teachers today, many coaches today who have perhaps haved a failed life, right? Somebody trying to give you advice on your own wedding, and he's actually had a divorce, right? So on your marriage, not on your wedding. So all these kinds of people are there. So you have to know what is that person's role. So if a person is going to talk to you about stock selection and portfolio creation and reallocation, the question to ask is twofold. One is, how do you know this? Second, have you done this for yourself, or have you done it for others? Most of the professor types will have lot of following. There is absolutely no problem about that. They will know a lot of theory. They may have read a lot, but they may not have actually done it, right? So there is nothing wrong, right? The king had an advisor who would be just an advisor. He was not the king, but he was an advisor. The king would take the advice and then decide what to do. So you are the king. It is perfectly all right to have a professor type of a person who is largely a theoretician, who can tell you exactly what you should be doing. How to implement it, that person may not know. He may not have ever implemented. So these are theoreticians. You need theoreticians. You need pure research people who will tell you things about a company. They will be able to analyze the company and say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Then there will be practitioners who will say why this company is not worth buying because of some 5, 6 other reasons. You need to understand how to take this and to take this and assimilate it, and then take a decision on which share to buy or which fund to invest, on how to manage your money, right? So it is not wrong to find people who are just professors, who can talk about valuation, who can talk about calculators, who can say how much money you require for retirement, sequence of return risk, all those things. But remember, they are not the practitioners. Then there are practitioners who may not have such a great in-depth knowledge. That is also possible. They'll say, oh, this is what I did, right? This is what I did does not mean this is what you should do. You should find out from the theoretician what is applicable to you, from the hollow practitioner what is applicable to you, and create your own path, chart your own path. You have got to do all this. Don't expect that everything will come to you in a platter, right? The industry has definitely evolved from 1982. Definitely cost of transactions have gone down. Better quality people have come into the profession. Bloggers are telling you a lot about how to invest. International bloggers, national bloggers, very high quality bloggers are there. But a lot of bloggers with a lot of limitations are also there that you need to understand. A person who says that I do value investing, or I do growth investing, I do momentum investing, you need to know with whom, what to tie up for what, how much they charge. Is it really free? I don't think there is any blog which is really free and they have nothing to sell, right? I have these 4 books to sell, and other than that I don't have anything else to sell. I have my training programs to sell, but my training programs don't sell because I do vlogs. Anyway, that apart, I am digressing. So understand that. So I don't think it was possible, or not too many chartered accountants would give up their practice to come into wealth management. But today I hope more people do. Over a 20-30 year period, you realize that there are a lot of changes which have happened. For example, trading has become very easy. Anybody can trade. You can trade from your phone. That does not mean investing has become easy, right? Investing has actually become far more difficult. We never had a mandate to beat the market. No client ever came and said, you have to give me returns better than the market. He just had targets. Most of us were investors with a absolute return investor. How much return did we get? Did we beat the bank deposit? Did we beat PPF? That is all. It was not as though But people expected that if they are in equity, they should get a higher return. That is people's expectation. But I don't think they ever said that if the index goes down by 2%, you should go down by only 1%, or you should ideally not go down at all. It didn't matter. You lost money, you made money. But people perhaps learned to handle volatility better, because the broker would say, nahi, itna sauda nahi karne ka. You're putting too much money into this share. This patavat losses you have carried forward for too long, just square it off now. Give some shares, do something. I can't be charging you interest on the unpaid money for too long, right? Because suddenly one day you would just go away, right? So these kind of risk controls were there, and making money was easy. It was not so difficult. Then largely it meant taking a client from point A to point B. It didn't matter what speed you went, what was the standard deviation, but halfway through you said, sir, I don't think we will be able to reach the destination. You may have to change the destination or change the date of reaching, right? And we also needed to have employees who had that feeling. So we had totally about 20 employees when we were in broking, and every employee knew every client. So they knew this client, how much limit we should give and how much we should not give. All that was part of our wealth creation. We were creating wealth for ourselves, and we were creating wealth for our clients. And we could really do a lot of good also, because we could do money lending in form of badla and things like that. So clients with money would give money to clients who needed money, and that kind of a marriage would happen. Then came SEBI and said, you can do this, you can't do this, and things like that. And even today, I found one big broking company making far greater money in lending than in brokerage, right? So when banks enter broking, these kind of things will happen, which is good for the client. It is not that it's bad for the client, but you need to understand what you expect from an IFA, how much power you are giving it to him, and all those things. Understand all this. This is the understanding is a very important step in the wealth creation process. Thank you.